Hey guys, it's me, and I'm back with part 2 of The Breaker. I have a lot to say this time, so I'll just skip the introductions and get right to it. To start off with, I'll just get the stuff that I don't like out of the way, because there isn't that much, and I want to quickly get to the good stuff. The first problem I have is that this mon was horny. Like, no one asked for it to be this horny. Scratch that, some people definitely asked for this, but I sure didn't. I'm not complaining though, just throwing it out there. Like if we had a sliding scale, and on one end you had like Redo of Healer and Interspecies Reviewers, and on the other hand you had the Bible. For reference, a lot of series go like right about in the middle of those two. You know, like they fall halfway between watch it with your parents and watch it to get demonetized. Like Cultivation of the City is already pushing the median a bit closer to the fucky area of things, but then the Breaker comes down, breaking down the door, like your drunk uncle during Christmas, and like taking that ball and rolling it all the way towards the I can't believe it's not hentai side of things. Okay, I may be exaggerating a bit. It's not even close to as bad as like Redo of Healer or even Cultivation of the City, but it's probably a bit jarring to anyone not familiar with how strange these series can be. Another small problem is the amount of strange pseudo-Japanese tropes that seem kind of shoehorned in there and are kind of creepy. Like, this is probably going to sound very weird to a lot of you, and I'm not defending it because it's strange and probably my least favorite aspect of Japanese media. But I mean, it exists, so not acknowledging it would just be weirder and probably shock a lot of the people who may be reading The Breaker for the first time. So, in Japanese media, like, it doesn't matter what age the media is for, it can be literally anything. But in these stories, there will occasionally be characters who are very different in age than how they look, and oftentimes there isn't really a reason for this. These characters just kind of exist in the world, giving a massive middle finger to anyone who tries to accurately pinpoint their age. And you know what? Just to prove my point, let's see if you guys can guess the ages of these two characters. Elaine from Seven Deadly Sins and Biscuit from Hunter x Hunter. Let's see if you can guess their ages correctly, and if you do, you get a cookie. Alright, got your answers? Well, it doesn't matter, because I'm 100% sure you got it wrong anyways. But if you really want to know if you're right, Elaine's 1,000 years old and Biscuit is 57. So yeah, I think you can see what I'm talking about now. There isn't really a nice way of putting this, but in The Breaker there's a character which is supposedly 15, but in actuality looks a decent bit less than that. And I mean, there isn't really much to say about it. Like, I wouldn't say this is as bad compared to other characters like this, because this character is actually integral to the story, and like plays into the plot in a really cool way, which I'll talk about more later on, but yeah, it's still very, very strange. That's pretty much all of my problems with the series, so I think we can move on to some positive stuff now, because God knows we have enough negativity in the world as it is. First off, the most obviously great thing about this series, the art. The art in The Breaker is consistently amazing. Like, some of this shit would feel at home next to the Mona Lisa. It starts off a bit sketchy, which may just be a problem with the place I read it, but who knows. Either way, it gets amazing as the story goes on. The fight scenes are so well organized and directed, and aside from the aforementioned sus framing, they always have a sense of cohesion. From the mundane scenes to the one filled with terror and excitement, almost every scene in this manhwa was made 10 times better by the art and the art alone. And that would be enough to make a 10-minute video about ranting. But that art is only a small piece of a much larger and much more succulent cake. If you didn't notice, I'm trying to go from the spoiler-free topics to the more intense and integral ones. So next up on the list is the pacing. Pacing is a strange quality in a lot of stories, because if it's done correctly, you hardly notice it. Like that little bit of salt on your already well-salted plate of salad, which just brings the whole thing together. But in this case, I feel this pacing is worth mentioning, because of how it's done absolutely horrendously in almost every other story of this type. The world of The Breaker is expanded so realistically and naturally that it's almost a work of art in and of itself. It starts off small and closed off, but slowly but surely expands to a size that you never would have expected when you were first introduced to it. Similar to my And speaking of the world, let's talk about that for a bit. The world of 90% of other martial arts stories are copy-paste of each other, with the only difference between them being the power systems which exist within the world, if the series in question even bothers changing those. The world of The Breaker, as I said before, starts out small scale, with each important part of it being introduced only when it's relevant or natural for it to be revealed. The power systems and dynamics between organizations don't simply exist in the world, they make up it. This is a bit tangential, but in my opinion, there's two main categories of worlds that you can find when looking through fictional settings. The complete fantasy worlds with very little to no similarities to our current one, or the hidden world that exists as part of our actual world but which no one seems to know about. The fantastical side of thing is something that I'll talk about in a different video, but the hidden world is something that's applicable to The Breaker. The problem I find most often with these worlds is the way they fit into the world we know of as Earth. For an example of these stories, look at Harry Potter. The general formula goes like this. The main character, who was previously just a normal person, finds out in some way about this world that no one had known about previously, and usually discovers that they have some kind of connection to the world which draws them into it. And then something plot ensues. Pretty standard, but the problem I have with these are the way that the world that's just been introduced differs from the one found in a mundane slice of life. In stories that do this right, like Harry Potter, the place the main character finds themselves is so significantly different from the normal world that there's no way to mistake the new setting with the mundane one. And even among stories that do this right, The Breaker stands out in the way it accomplishes this. In The Breaker, there's no magic. The special people in the world have inner energy, or ki, but that doesn't change the basic laws of humanity which apply to them. They can't do anything crazy, like fly or survive being stabbed or not stay up till 2 watching YouTube instead of finishing homework. And because of that, the setting for the plot are usually just as mundane. A crowded street, a silent school building, or a towering skyscraper. All of these places you can expect to see as a normal person in as well. Meaning the problem I talked about earlier should apply, right? Well, that's where The Breaker carves its own identity. In The Breaker, these locations, which should be confusing and out of place, instead become part of the story and explanation of the world. The Breaker is a modern martial arts story, not in that it was a story that was written recently, but instead that it was a story set in a modern setting, as opposed to other stories of this nature, which are set centuries in the future, past, or just straight up in another dimension. Because some of the shit which happens in these stories would never happen in our reality. Because of this, it has a lot of work to do in making you believe these people could exist in our time and our world. And that's where these mundane settings come into play. The secret martial arts government doesn't reside in some sacred underground temple which has been existing under our feet for decades. It convenes at the intersection between 12th and 14th Streets in the middle of fucking New York. The students of these clans don't go to school in a hidden monastery for training and education. They go to that high school down the road where they learn about trigonometry and biology, in between lessons on how to snap a guy's neck. Like, the way the story is portrayed, it wouldn't be unrealistic for the higher-ups of the big clans to stop by at a fucking McDonald's to pick up a Happy Meal before starting some gang violence down at the park at like 12 a.m. And that's the reason the settings are so mundane and modern. It's unrealistic to believe these societies could continue existing if they didn't adapt to the times. And that's why, in this story, it's not explicitly stated that they did, but still very clear. And that is the perfect segue into talking about the organizations themselves. Damn, I'm on a roll with these transitions. Each and every one of these groups and organizations in the world of The Breaker all have a goal or a reason to exist, and each of these goals are very clearly set up and expanded upon as the story goes on. And each of them have a relationship with each other that goes beyond simple coexistence. This is going to be a bit spoilery as time goes on, so if you heard the stuff I talked about earlier and are interested in reading The Breaker, watch out, because a lot of the stuff that I want to talk about is from the sequel to The Breaker, and it's hard to talk about a sequel without talking about the events which preceded it. So to start out with, let's talk about the Sun Wu clan. In the world of The Breaker, the Sun Wu clan is one of the biggest groups of martial artists, aside from the Martial Arts Alliance itself, which is just like the leader of the martial arts world. The might of the Sun Wu is known by all, and their existence was a threat even to the aforementioned martial arts executive branch. And because of that, the Martial Arts Alliance kidnapped the leader of the Sun Wu clan, and essentially held them as hostage to force the Sun Wu clan to listen to them. Pretty shitty move, I know. And that leader which was kidnapped is the aforementioned totally 15-year-old, which took a liking to the main character. As I stated in the last video, the Nine Arts Dragon, or a main character's master, has a grudge against the Martial Arts Association, and to get back at them, he frees the leader of the Sun Wu clan, that girl, and in doing so, allows the Sun Wu clan to be free of the association's control. This plan was supposed to allow the Sun Wu clan to be free to strike at the association if they wished to, however, a development occurred that no one could have expected. Remember when I said that I actually liked the purpose that the leader of the Sun Wu clan had towards the plot? Yeah, this is what I was talking about. So, after the leader, So Sul, was released, she became friends with Shiwun, due to them being of similar ages and because of his kind attitude towards her. Because of the friendship which grew between them during the finale of The Breaker, So Sul gives Shiwun the Phoenix Medallion, which is a symbol which represents the leader of the Sun Wu clan, essentially making Shiwun second in ranking in the clan to So Sul herself. At the end of The Breaker, So Sul leaves for basically the next 100 chapters or so, thank gosh, leaving Shiwun to his new position as head of the Sun Wu clan. And this setup is just so incredibly fun and entertaining to watch, because like it just provides so many new dynamics between characters and groups, and it just expands the scope of the world by that much more. Like, major props to the author, because a lot of other series struggle to find a reason to continue the story of its predecessor, but with this one plot development, Shiwun is not only given motivation to like continue being our protagonist, but also this just shows us so many more aspects of the world that we thought we already knew. I know this probably won't make sense to a lot of you, but I might as well just give you guys some examples of the ramifications of this one act. So, after Shiwun becomes the leader of the Sunwoo clan, they have like an internal power struggle, because some of the elders don't really see him as worthy to lead the clan, and Shiwun isn't exactly willing to lead it first either. And during that whole thing, the Sunwoo clan is extremely hostile towards the Martial Arts Association, you know, kidnapping their old leader and everything. But despite this, Shiwun is kind of a pacifist and doesn't really want to fight them. And during that whole thing, a separate clan, the Heavenly Way School, has had a long time beef with the Sunwoo clan. But Shiwun, as the leader of the clan, is friends with one of the Heavenly Way School's members. All of these situations pile up to create some interesting and memorable conflicts, both inside the Sunwoo clan and outside of it as well. And this is just one such example of this happening. These plot developments are extremely numerous to the point of being commonplace. And all of this stuff that I mentioned, like all of these insane positives, are without even going into what I believe is the best aspect of the Breaker. The characters. There's so many badass moments and amazing developments, and just like some of this stuff actually just gives me goosebumps. I can't get into every character and like every amazing moment that I want to talk about, so I'll just limit myself to one for this video. And who better to talk about than our main character, Shiwun. Also, I'll be talking briefly about some topics that I discussed in my last video, so if you haven't already, check it out if you want a full dive into some of the themes I believe are integral to the story. I mean, it's not necessary, but like, if you want to, you can check it out. Shiwun starts out as a nobody at the beginning of the Breaker. He's purposely written to be a stand-in for every single one of us. Have you ever gotten bullied? Yeah, you can relate to Shiwun. Have you ever gotten into fights with your parents? Yeah, you can relate to Shiwun. Have you ever been told by your teacher to jump off a bridge and then you actually go and do it? Yeah, you can relate to Shiwun. Maybe not that last one. And that's not a very good sign, because other media has proved in spades that self-insert protagonists are a bit cringe. But that's where I was surprised, because Shiwun goes from somebody you can see yourself in to somebody you want to see yourself in. He goes through like qualitative improvements and development as the story goes on, and I know that feels like a guarantee for a story to like have character development and stuff, but you don't know how many times I've been hurt by this genre. But I don't want to think about the lasting trauma Cultivators in the City has given me, because I have a better series to talk about. So, at the beginning of the story, Shiwun is kinda sad. He isn't doing the greatest. He's constantly bullied and constantly pushed around, and he even thinks of ending it all. However, he is saved by one man, his teacher. Through his discovery of martial arts through his teacher, he learns all of these techniques and moves just so he can live a normal life in peace without bullies. And that is his end goal, just to have a normal life. And in that aspect, Shiwun grows very little throughout the story of the Breaker proper. He ends his story without a key center, which makes him unable to do martial arts. But he still returns to his mundane day-to-day, satisfied that his bullies are gone, and maybe slightly sad about what happened at the end of the Breaker, which I'll try my best not to spoil, but he moves on. And at the start of the Breaker New Waves, this is where we find him. Content. But of course, that doesn't last for long. Because of the circumstances I mentioned earlier, Shiwun inherits the title as the leader of the Sunwoo clan. At first he's unwilling, he simply wants a normal life and desires no entanglement with this world that hurt him so much in the past. However, slowly but surely he comes around, and is convinced by those around him. And he even becomes a willing leader. However, he still doesn't feel any attachment to his position as leader. That is, until one of his closest friends dies for him. I won't reveal how or who it happened to, but one of the Sunwoo clan's heads sacrificed themselves to try and keep Shiwun safe, and ends up dying as a result. This person who died always kept the Sunwoo clan as dearest in their heart, and always did what was best for it, and even though he had disliked Shiwun at the beginning, he quickly turned into one of his most vocal allies. And this death hurts Shiwun deeply. And this is the moment that Shiwun changes forever. Through his friend's death, Shiwun takes on his love for the Sunwoo clan and desire to help it, and truly dedicates himself to his role as head of the clan. And this transformation honestly just gives me chills, to see Shiwun go from a kid who just wants to live his life as best as he can, to a man who's willing to sacrifice his entire being, just to keep holy the thing that his friend had held as sacred. I'm not sure if the beauty of this transformation can be translated well, but I hope I gave you at least a little bit of a glimpse into the greatness that can be found in this series. And I hope I convinced at least one of you to give it a chance, because for all its flaws, The Breaker is a work of art. It's a martial arts story played serious when the entire genre can be considered a joke. It's a manhwa with an original and beautiful story to tell, when so many other manhwa tell stories for the fame. It's a tale of honor and strength and growth like no other I've ever seen. And because of all of this and more, I can't stress enough how much I recommend that you read The Breaker. Thank you guys for watching. I can only imagine how long this has taken to come out due to its like insane length and ambitious nature. Hopefully the end product turned out well though, and is something I can be proud of, because that's all I strive for. I can't say for certain what my next video will be about, because school's a bitch and I have a lot of plans. But I am trying to make an AMV Like I made one for my introduction video, if you guys saw that, but I'm trying to make like a full-length proper one that I can actually like post as a separate video. And if all goes well, that should be in about 3 or 4 weeks coming out. Who knows though? Nothing's set in stone. But I'll see you guys when I see you. I promise there'll be something coming out soon, regardless of what it is. So yeah, have a great day and bye.